Welcome to this talk on Express, an approach for application delivery which we have been using to introduce Agile to enterprise with some of our key clients. My name is Will Webster. I work for Agilon as the Agile Development Lead, and I have over a decade's worth of Agile experience both as a developer and a coach. The Express approach uses a short time box of typically 6 weeks, which fully leverages Agile and Lean techniques to deliver a predefined outcome. The method is most suited to smaller, less complex projects with limited training needs, projects built using existing architectural patterns, innovation spikes for validated learning, or for testing out new technologies. The approach is, by its nature, highly collaborative, open for inspection and low risk. It's an iterative process which is all about gaining feedback quickly. Some of the key benefits of this approach include quick delivery, low cost and an introduction to Agile practices. So it's a real win for businesses who want to trial Agile and get important projects done quickly. In order to be successful, there are some key ingredients. So the team size is very important, and the team needs to be highly skilled and cross-functional. We pick a team size of 3 to 4. This enables really high bandwidth for people to communicate effectively and get things done. Interestingly, I also recently learned this is the average team size for teams that win hackathons. For obvious reasons, and it seems to work very well for these small projects. The team will have to fully leverage Agile practices. There's not a lot of time, and these are really leaned upon to make us effective and make sure that we can deliver. And the team empowerment and having the ability to escalate roadblocks is very important. So here I've got a visual of the Express approach. So what this shows is that obviously we have week 1, which is outcome planning. Then there will be 4 weeks of design and construct, and finally a cutover. As you can see with the visualization, it's an iterative approach, and there are breakout points which I'll discuss further. Now let me just lose the picture here. So first of all, I'd like to talk about the process being open for inspection. So the Express model is really a transparent process. We like to show and demonstrate progress and make sure the approach is visible to all. And there's a few ways that we do this. Firstly, stand-ups. The team will have a stand-up typically in the morning for each day. This is for the team themselves to plan what they'll be doing. Stakeholders and product owners are welcome to attend, and again it's about being visible, and we embrace having people come in and find out what we're up to. If the stakeholder and so forth would like some updates, then we can take this offline afterwards. But also it's a great place for everyone to come together and know that the team will be there and organise meetings and so forth. Typically we try and keep these meetings quite short, so no more than 15 minutes. If you're going over that, then it's not really being effective, especially if you've got everyone involved. So it's really key to keep these to 15 minutes at maximum. So the weekly review, this happens at the end of each week. The product owners and businesses really love this because we're able to demonstrate working software, not how many hours we've burnt down on the chart, but actually tangible progress. We use this to test our assumptions early, make sure we're building the right thing, get a usability review, and again, being totally transparent, this is what we have achieved in this week. So outcome planning, this is week 1. Now it's really crucial we get off to a good start and get the ball rolling. So I'll guide you through how we typically do this. So we have a number of workshops and maturing sessions as needed. In this first week, it's really important to engage the stakeholders, understand their roles and responsibilities in the process, also introduce them to Express and some of the Agile techniques that we might be using. As a team, we need to confirm the vision and value of the project. We want to make sure that we're orientated around the goal and we really understand the business needs. I encourage the teams not to be afraid to ask stupid questions. We can't assume too much at this stage, and we need to verify that we understand things correctly. Sometimes this can be a bit awkward, potentially if businesses have already been asked some of these questions, but it's key that we get this out there. I also encourage some definition of metrics in a lean approach to establish and measure our outcome. So typically we'll look for a baseline perhaps and work with the vision and the goals and look for some targets. And that typically drives some really worthwhile conversations and is good to do. So Lean UX, so we've been practicing a kind of a no PSD approach to team collaboration. And this is really having quick designs, which are really vital for communication and to drive out the requirements and help the team get a general understanding. We may use whiteboards or paper. We favour a kind of a low-tech approach, which is highly efficient. As required, we also have had usability experts as part of the team, and that's been really, really useful. And even for normal projects, definitely encourage the teams to do some usability testing, even if that's kind of out of the box guerrilla style stuff or on a machine. We've used things like Link, which is just doing a screen record to capture the sessions, and there's open source software as well, such as the software I'm using to record this session, so it's easily doable. Personas are really important, and we've been using them to understand the individual users and their circumstances. It really helps the team empathise and understand the real business need from the different users that might be interacting with the system. So for example, you may have admins or users with limited skills, and it helps you think and drive out what might they want from the software, how is it going to work for them. Perhaps are there certain technical limitations, such as being in a remote location with low bandwidth. So this is really the key part to kicking off the requirements phase. Now this feeds into user stories, which we leverage a lot. These help us drive out the requirements. It's a really lean approach based around conversations. So I've got some examples up there of the formats that we use. A key message I would say is don't get hung up on the format. It's really not that important. Having the conversations is really key as a team and as a group. A nice approach is on the back of the card to flip it over and have the acceptance criteria. Just as bullet points is fine. And make sure your user stories are engaged with business language and focus on functional requirements. The user stories will then be collected together to form the backlog. This will be prioritised by the product owner, which is really important. They own the backlog and they need to set the priority so the team can make sure we're working on the most valuable features first. During Express, we've also been showcasing some Agile estimation techniques. This is really helpful early on to confirm Express is a fit for the project. It's also a proven method for accurate estimation. So this gives enterprise a great taste of how this works, perhaps how it would work on a full-scale Scrum project. So this is actually a chart that we've used for one of our Express projects. So what you have along the left axis is the story points, and the bottom are the 4 cycles, design and construct. The green bands there are a range of where we estimated that we'd fall, and as you can see, we tracked pretty well. We had quite a good week at the end there, but always within those bands. So that's outcome planning. I guess one thing that I'd mention is to make sure that you operations are aware of the projects and the timelines and start standing up their environments as soon as possible. Now on to design and construct. This is where we put the meat on the bones. This is where we start to finalise the designs and cutting code, and there's 4 of these cycles. So during this phase we really utilise the Agile boards. As you can see in this image here, we have our user personas over on the left. We'll have an Agile board there which will be done, work in progress and to do, and we'll have our story cards and our backlog up there. We don't typically as a team break our story cards down into tasks. The reason for that is that we don't really have the time and for the overhead of doing that, and also, as I mentioned before, it's really important for these express teams to be empowered and trusted. We have a review at the end of each week, so it's clearly visible, are we tracking on schedule, what have we been producing. So having tasks broken down with hours tracked really doesn't help us. On the board also there you'll see we have the UX mock-ups, and I've zoomed in a little bit there to show you another aspect which is quite interesting, and that's the different coloured cards. So we have the pink cards we use for bug tracking, so if anything is worth fixing then it will go on the board as a pink note. The purple ones we've put up and used previously for UX enhancements, and sometimes we may use another card colour maybe for technical tasks or so forth. So it's really key to have that all on the board. It visualises what the team is working on, what we've been doing, we can talk about it, move it at the stand-ups. But again, it's a really low-tech approach and a highly efficient approach of monitoring this work. We don't want to have the overhead of bug tracking software and so forth. Once a bug is validate that it's no longer required, you just screw it up and chuck it in the bin. So during design and construct, the lean UX designs will evolve into code, and we try and learn and evolve and iterate quickly. We embrace having emergent acceptance criteria as our understanding matures, so the backlog, as we start to have some of these conversations about the whiteboards, we might add extra bullet notes to the stories. So the backlog. Despite having a small time box, it's really important that we embrace change. As I said about the emergent acceptance criteria, and we really focus on the top stories, make sure that they're really well defined, that they're the top priority, that we understand them. So the stories that we're working on are the ones that might be coming up next. The rest of the stories we need to understand to a degree so we can size them for estimation, but all the minor details don't need to be filled out. As we go along, we may arrange ad hoc maturing sessions, perhaps break out of the whiteboard and do some UX designs as required. Now coding. So there's obviously a lot of coding going on now in these 4 weeks. When programming, it's really important to encourage collective code ownership amongst the team. As a small team, we cannot risk relying on one individual. We all need to be capable. Pairing and code reviews are a great way of doing this. We practice TDD when appropriate, bearing in mind the types of projects we are doing. This kind of development flow isn't always suitable. But other extreme programming practices, such as simple design, is vitally important. We cannot afford to over-engineer and ideally need to get it right first time. To increase the likelihood of this, we take a look around our environment at what has already worked and see if there are any patterns or techniques we can apply. So that's design and construct. So again, 4 of these cycles with the reviews at the end and demonstrating working software with an evolving backlog. Now lastly, the cutover. So again, a very crucial stage where it's all coming together. So there are a couple of key points that I want to highlight here which are of interest. One of them is the documentation. So there's a common misconception that if you're running an Agile project that documentation kind of falls off the radar. This is certainly should not be the case. And one of the things that we've done as an Express team is we've come in as an Agile team doing a very short project, and we've been still delivering very good documentation. And it's key really to just make sure you document the important things really, and it doesn't take a long time. So, for example, we'll do a high level architectural review, something that might be on 1 or 2 pages that someone could sit and read over coffee. We'll detail the configuration options, how to package and deploy, which is really important for the support teams, how to set up a developer machine if someone needs to make some modifications. And then the functional requirements, as we've built this now, we have a really good understanding of how it works and what's required. So really light touch, take some screenshots, maybe some arrows, some highlights, and just document the user stories as they are now and some acceptance criteria. And that gives people a good understanding of, in the future, how is this supposed to work? Is this broken? And if you've got that in the documentation, it doesn't take a lot, and it's really helpful for the people outside of the project team. So during the cutover, we also have a retrospective. I quite like this image. I found it online with a Creative Commons, but the guys are obviously having their retrospective over a few drinks, which I like. A nice thing to do on a Friday if you can find a good spot for it. But on a serious note, this is really important, and this is all about learning, inspecting and adapting, as they say, and having your lessons learned. And as a team, over time, the projects we've delivered, we've really used this to continually improve and make the process better. So, very important. So the cutover, I've talked about documentation and the retrospectives. So during this week we'll also hand over the code to support, make sure everything is running. We will try and ideally get it into production and get it live and in front of the user. Make sure the code base is finalised. Perhaps have a review with the internal teams, which we do if that's available to us. And then aftercare is available as required. But like I say, ideally we would like to get it into production as soon as possible. So some of the lessons learned that we've pulled up on when we have had our retrospectives. It's really important to have a round table and discuss the solutions architecture. So ideally you need to try and get all the key decision makers in the room there. Perhaps have the discussion over a whiteboard, but it's best to try and get a consensus with everyone that you need to as early as possible. If you start having separate meetings here and there, then it can be very difficult, and you need to really get everyone on the same page as soon as possible. So as you've probably seen from this presentation, also the UX mock-ups and user stories, these approaches are really key to this Express approach. We don't have a lot of time, and these Agile techniques are really important, and leveraging them has made us, allowed us to have the efficiencies that we require, basically, and they're really important. Making sure early that you have the right roles and responsibilities set. So that goes back to this planning week, and that's the most important thing there, is explaining Express, get everyone on board, understand who does what the responsibilities are, and getting the commitment from the stakeholders and product owners. And to be honest, that's not been a problem on any of the projects that we've worked on. They really want to be involved. They've got a business problem and an idea that they're the champion of, that they want to see developed. They're very eager to get involved, and I think it helps having that weekly review, that they really do feel part of the process, and so that's typically not a problem, but you need to make sure they understand what's required of them and how they're going to fit into the model. And then, the standing up environments, of course, very quick turnaround is required. Don't have a lot of time. So, thank you very much for for listening to the presentation or watching the presentation. My contact details are up there. As I say, I'm the Agile Development Lead with Agilon. I'm available for any questions that you might have. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I will see you around.